So next to me there's Jeff Jarvis. You are also one of the speakers today, and it's all about platforms. And if people know you, it's always about platforms. So when I first read your book, What Would Google Do? It was about the platforms and the doom of the middleman and no gatekeepers anymore. And I don't know if you changed your perspective from these days to now. So what is your definition of being a platform or a publisher in the differences from 2011 to today?
There's a lot of debate today. First, Jarvis, hello.
Jarvis?
Good to see you, yes. And there's a lot of debate today about whether the platforms are publishers. And publishers tend to try to argue that Google and Facebook are publishers, and I think they're not. I think there's something entirely new. They enable people to do whatever they want to do. They're built on an entirely new scale and structure. And so I think it's a mistake when we try to look at Google and Facebook and Twitter as platforms, as publishers rather than platforms, and try to regulate them that way.
But on the other hand, platforms, for instance, like YouTube or Instagram or Facebook, they have mechanics and features they just give to verified users or paid partners or big brands. And so they have a lot of regulation in their community guidelines where they can differentiate between users and users and users. Is that something different or something from what we should see differently from the perspective of a regulator?
Yeah, I think it is different. I think it's important now because we have this problem of the platforms being manipulated by bad actors. And the platforms were set up to be the same to everybody. And now they realize they've got to make judgments. And they've got to understand who's a manipulator, who's a bad actor, and who's good. One of the ways they can do that is to recognize media companies and journalists and news companies and give them some advantage. So there's a real advantage to us in media, to the platforms recognizing that we bring them quality.
So you wrote the sentence, there's a doom of a middleman, there's no gatekeeper anymore. Aren't platforms exactly that?
Yes and no. Lord knows we have no choice but to go through the platforms today because that's where the audience is. But the audience is there because now anybody can do what we did. That is to say, anyone can speak, anyone can publish. And yes, right now, especially in the US, sorry for what's happening there.
It's okay.
It's
not okay, but
it's not.
It's not your fault.
It is what it is. Bad actors, manipulators are using the platforms to bad end. But at the same time, people are able to speak who never were heard before through media. In the United States, we have the Me Too movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, the Living While Black movement. These are things that were never covered in media. They've been going on for decades or centuries, but now because of the platforms, people who never had a voice have a voice. That's what still makes them different. That's what still makes them open to the world.
So in the year 2000, like this, when the Web 2.0 began to rise, there was a new democratic process in publishing.
Ah, those were the days. Yeah.
Those were the days. And you started blogging that days, and you had your Dell Hell and things like that at this time. So there was a new power to the user. And then the platforms rise. And do you think, or do you still think that these platforms are a big way to move on with the democratic process in publishing? Or is it just turning to the opposite?
I miss those early days of blogging. They were pretty wonderful. If I remember my blog roll, I had people from the left and the right on it, and people from Germany on it, and all over the world. And it was kind of wonderful. And I asked recently one of the pioneers of blogging, what happened? It was so good then. And he said, Jeff, everything is great when it starts. And then the bad guys come in, and then they figure out what's going on. And in a sense, yeah, I regret that those early days of blogging are gone. But in a sense, it was also a rather exclusive club. It was those of us who were in media decided we had our own new media properties. And now if you go to Twitter and you go to Facebook, you see people again who were not part of that world. And so I think it's actually opened up more. And I welcome that.
Yeah, but you're also one who talk always about the entrepreneurial side of journalism. So encouraging journalists to maybe skip their job or quit their job and be an entrepreneur. So to do their business on their own. And I still would agree with that. But on the other hand, it also means that you have to face there are other people on these platforms who are successful, who are more successful by doing more trivial things, more easy things for the audience. And so what do you think about that, being an entrepreneurial journalist?
It's not easy being an entrepreneur. I've taught it for 12 years now, and some people have it in their soul and some don't. I do think it's important for every journalist to understand the business of journalism, to become a responsible leader, a responsible steward around journalism. So that's still true. But it's hard. It's probably harder today than it was 10 years ago to start new businesses. And you're right. I think that if you just follow the crowd, you're going to do trivial things. But the opportunity is to reinvent journalism. The opportunity is to come up with new business models. I think that our business model in media, the mass media-based business model of attention-based advertising, is what led us astray and is also leading the platforms down. It leads you inevitably to Katz and Kardashians and ultimately Donald Trump. But if we can reinvent advertising, if we can reinvent media around higher visions of value, then we have a sustainable future. We're in the early days. I'm here in the land of Gutenberg, and if you go by Gutenberg time, we're only at the year 1474. We're 24 years after the invention of the commercial web. We don't know what the internet is yet. We have a lot of time to work on this.
Maybe the pace of innovation is different from that time to today, but...
maybe not. Maybe not. It's also possible my friend Wolfgang Blau, who's now at Condé Nast International, just gave a talk saying that the press led to the 30 Years' War. So I hope the internet doesn't quite do that.
Okay. So, but going back to the entrepreneurial thing for journalists, so journalists are very good storytellers. And storytelling is totally different from what it was 10 years or 15 years ago. So now we produce content in portrait mode or in square mode. We have scrolly-telling and all things like that. So isn't it quite hard for journalists to reinvent the way of storytelling and also to define what they do as a business model to make money with this, and to define a whole way of this, and also open up whole new opportunities of distribution, like going back from radio to podcast, going from TV to streaming platforms like Twitch or YouTube, going from printing in a newspaper to presenting it on an own blog. So how you encourage these people to say, okay, stop doing this, what you do right now and earning money, and do something where you don't earn anything right now?
Few things. One is, if you're telling a story on Twitch, you might be doing that to market yourself. You might be doing that to get an audience, get a community. Second, you may be getting money in new ways. If you look at the fact that Patreon supports all kinds of people who are on Twitch, for example.
So it's a donation service.
It's
for the
a new
audience.
model, right? It is a donation service. There's a lot of opportunities around that. Third, I will argue that we are not just storytellers, and that we have to get past storytelling. Storytelling says that we control the narrative, that we are in charge.
Oh, okay.
I think that journalism is a service, and a service is subservient to the public. And the most important skill that I've learned we have to teach now is listening. Not speaking, not storytelling, but listening.
So you're more in the role of a moderator, or?
Yes, I think that's part of it. You're also in the role of a servant. We teach our students now, I started a new program in social journalism, where they almost become anthropologists. They observe and listen to a community, understand the community's needs, reflect those needs back. Then you can figure out what the community needs. We in journalism are normally taught to say, well, we know what's important, we know the story that you should be told, we know what facts you need, and we'll tell you. And then we complain when no one listens to us.
I would like to go back to the platform things and continue on that, because once you said, do what you do best and link to the rest. That was one of your quotes years ago. And back to Facebook and what newspapers or publishing houses doing there. They tried to link to what they had on their website, and it was not successful. So the link was not that visible in the algorithm of Facebook. And then Facebook asked them to publish videos on the platform. So that was not what they do best. So it was something they were really bad in the beginning, producing video content. They could produce good newspaper sites and they could link to it. So how does that quote is putting into practice for publishing houses when they have to work against the algorithm?
It's still true in a few ways. Number one, you can't be everything to everyone. So you have to decide what you're best at, and you have to be the best at that, and then link to the rest. That still holds, I think. But you're right that it's not anymore just about linking to your site, to your destination. The problem is we're not destinations all the time anymore. If the public is on Facebook, we have to take journalism there. Yes, that means we are then subject to Facebook's rules and whims. That can be an issue. It has been an issue. But I hope that we can start to figure out ways that we can serve the public wherever they are and make money where that is. Facebook started instant articles. It was okay.
It was a nightmare for the publishing houses.
It was difficult for them to have to do both AMP and their own sites and mobile ready and instant articles. Yes, that's true.
For the audience, AMP is the opposite of instant articles on Google. So
Google,
the
right.
site are very quickly loading in the browser.
The other thing that happened was when the bad manipulators came along with Facebook is that they kind of threw out all public content, and now they're trying to bring back quality content. So full disclosure, I raised money for my school from Facebook, working on a project trying to aggregate the signals of quality in news to help the platforms bring that quality news back, to help them help us. The irony here is that the platforms, as big and powerful as they are, aren't that smart about a lot of things. And I think that we in media and we in journalism have to help them understand what quality is.
A lot of publishing houses said last year, okay, if the algorithm is like it is today, we should leave the platform. We should leave Facebook. We should leave Twitter and should focus on our own websites, on our own apps, on our paid walls and things like that. But on the other hand, if I see this, there's a lot of alternative media, fake sites, politicians, activists who try to manipulate the news. And they are turning to the platforms, and they're quite successful over there. So what do you tell these publishing houses if they want to leave the platform, not publishing content anymore there, focusing on their platforms and leaving the ground for the bad people?
I say good luck with that, because there are 2.3 billion people on Facebook. If we are here to serve the public, you can't just leave them behind. You may not like the company Facebook, but the people who are there are the public we serve. And I think that we have to do that. Second, the bad guys are actually teaching us lessons. 2 weeks ago, I was at a conference Google runs called Newsgeist, an unconference. One of the sessions was about the lessons we can learn from the bad guys, because they know how to manipulate the platforms. They know how to bring things to people. I go to a great conference every year called VidCon. And they now have VidCon. It's a YouTube fan conference. And they now have a European version. And it's really interesting to me because it taught me a different way to think about media. It taught me that media is a social token, that we need to provide facts and content that people can use as part of their own conversations. Videos they can share, memes they can share with facts in them. If we still insist that the whole world has to come to us, to our website, to our articles, we're going to lose. We have to change, and we have to go to where the people are, even if that's on a company we don't like.
Okay, thank you, Jeff Jarvis.
Thank you.
Great talk. I really appreciate that you're here. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here. And yeah, we should listen to your talk this afternoon. Thanks.
Cheers.